Hello, everybody. This is Anna from Auto Podcast, and today we have our next guest for the Web3 episode, James Burnie, who is a partner at the law firm Garner Cook, and he is specializing in AI and Web3. Hi, James. How are you?
I'm good, Anna. How are you doing? Delighted to be here.
Yeah, great. Surviving through the heat, but yeah, let's maybe just if you can give some quick introduction to your background and what you're doing, how you started, and so our listeners can actually know where you're coming from.
Sure. I'm a lawyer. I've been involved in crypto now for 10 years since advising on the first successful initial coin offering. So that's initial sale of a token from the United Kingdom. I've been involved in drafting up 3% of the world's global crypto assets regulation and active for around 300 companies. Gunnar Cook more broadly has about 50 people in it now specializing in Web3 and AI, covering particularly Germany, US, UK, and Switzerland as our kind of main hubs, and doing everything from the legal side, the compliance side, getting authorizations, but also doing things like smart contract builds, the coding builds, and that side of it. So basically, and then increasing now also accounting support as well, tax support. So effectively covering across the entire remit. And the way to see us is we kind of just fill in the boxes for the bits which people are missing in terms of trying to put together the strategy, particularly since, bluntly, there's very few people who actually specialize in this still at the moment. So we kind of bring all the different parts together under one global hub.
Do you remember the first time when you actually dive into the Web3? What was this aha moment?
So way back when, I discovered that all lawyers look the same. They all wear the same suit. I swear they come out the same factory, just one after the other. I discovered they're all charming. Some are more charming than others. I was less charming, therefore lost on the charming side. So had to go and find something suitably geeky to go do. I then walked into doing the first sale of a token from a UK-based entity way back when. Back then everyone thought I'd basically lost the plot and gone mad, but actually it was highly successful. And then because no one else wanted to do it, you start to pick up more and more on it. So about 10 years ago, crypto was for the weird geeky people who lived in small dark holes and didn't get out much. And as it's hit into the more and more mainstream world, it's been slightly strange to see it get bigger and bigger. And now it's becoming, in my view, a core part of any economy. But way back then, you could just turn up and you could just muck about effectively, take it a bit more seriously than you had to back then.
Can you actually give a little bit more details on your day-to-day tasks, or what are you
Yeah,
doing at the law firm? So what's the
sure.
normal
So
typical
in terms
Tuesday
of what
morning?
James said today, the crypto is split into two core fundamental groupings at the moment. You have the innovators, as they like to call themselves, or the Pirates of the Caribbean, if you see it the other way around. And then you get the people who are the more compliance-centric side on the other side. And you've got an entire shifting between the market. So if you come up with something genuinely really innovative, then you walk into the task from hell when it comes to actually trying to sell that to the retail public, because everyone associates innovation with high risk. So those sorts of firms are going more and more offshore effectively, and you're getting a sort of slide where they go down that route. And therefore you get these sort of jurisdictions now, which are offshore jurisdictions, which specialize in the riskier, more innovative new style of things. And that's part of what we do. So we help firms get up and running and up and running. And that side's about go get somewhere as fast as possible, get up and running, get it selling stuff as a startup quickly, cheaply, and try and get it so you can show the business model works. The other side to what we do is kind of the big style institutions. So these guys are going to take a compliance first, risk aware approach. So in fact, they're going to be looking at the people offshore and they're going to be looking at these guys and they're going, that looks too risky. That looks okay. That can do a bit of tweaking. And these are the guys who you have to go through to be able to access the normal retail public when it comes in. And the bang we're seeing at the moment is these barriers to accessing the general population are being put up by country after country in order to protect their local population. and the guys over here are having to struggle to get through it effectively. And therefore, more and more what we're doing is I would almost describe it as a pay-to-play style approach to building a business, i.e., you build your innovation, you want to sell it here. What is the cheapest, quickest approach to saying to as many people over here as possible, that is the current game we're playing. And it's by getting these guys comfortable and happy that it works. It's by getting these guys that commercially they can afford to jump through the level of compliance they need to jump through to get their business model to work. And that's basically where we're splitting out. So we've got one foot in each of the camps and trying to get the two camps to come together, because these guys can't survive unless they've got products to sell. And these guys can't survive without an audience to sell to. So you've got to get the two sides talking, even if naturally they tend to not talk to each other given half a chance.
So for example, yeah, it's just like the Web3 world is like changing very rapidly. If, for example, you are trying to give like a piece of advice for the Web3 founder, what it should not do when they're launching a specific project, like Web3 related, blockchain related.
Yeah, I think the key thing in my mind is remember you are a business, and all businesses all talk the talk, but every business only ever has one plan. That's just make money and try not to go bust, effectively. And what you get, you get lots of hypes. You get the decentralization hype, or you get the NFT hype. And these are guys all hype and hype and hype a concept. And the problem with that is you're starting to move towards an ideology rather than a business. And therefore, my view all the time is get a business, work out how the business is going to make money, and go down that route. So if you take something like DeFi, DeFi is decentralized finance is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is you become as decentralized as possible. Now, the problem with that is to a lawyer, when you get more and more decentralized, you're basically operating more and more companies, and your legal bill has just gone through the roof. My favorite ever client was a guy who spent an epic amount of money getting legal advice in 180 different countries to try and argue that what he did wasn't regulated. And then a year later, discovered most of the countries had changed position and therefore sort of exploded financially in terms of his legal spend. It wasn't sustainable, effectively. So the thing in my mind is, you are usually when when you're starting off, you're a startup, you've got to keep an eye on the money all the time, and if you need access to a market, and there are magic tricks to get it through. So, for example, if you want to access the EU, there's a trick you can use to get your bill to get into the EU down to about 20 to 30,000 euros, effectively. Yes, it's not as good as a full micro license, but it will give you access to the EU market. We've got people at the moment in the UK putting together other alternatives, trying to get access to the UK market to bring down the numbers. But keep an eye on those numbers all the time. Get a business which generally operates and then build out from that effectively. Because a lot of people ignore that side of it, the spend, be able to acquire clients on the legal and compliance side to it, and therefore sort of rush it. And one of the worst I ever saw was a guy who spent millions of pounds on sponsorship, but didn't actually, and I mean actual millions of pounds. We're talking a huge fundraise, millions spent. And then when it came to legal compliance, selling the product, had no money. And if he had the world's greatest brand, you just couldn't actually access any clients, if you see what I mean. So that's a disaster. Your legal and compliance spend, almost like your marketing spend, because it's sort of related in the sense if you can't service the market, you can piddle away money at the end of time on sponsorship deals or whatever. If you can't service a client, is money wasted, effectively. Sit in that vein and you'll be a far healthier business moving forwards, effectively. And that's basically the key thing coming out is just like, how are you going to make money and how are you going to stay sustainable? That is the key point all the time.
Mm-hmm. And do you have more examples actually of like the people you worked with, if you can actually disclose, or if there are specific like pillars of like the project, you can actually separate them?
Yeah, so we act for 15 to 20% of all the crypto companies in the UK, effectively. So we act across the entire board. If you're thinking about where you'll position yourself, the world of crypto splits into tribes. Each tribe does not speak to the other tribe, and each of the tribe likes to pretend the other tribe doesn't exist, effectively. And your tribe are the people like the I bought a Bitcoin tribe. The I bought a Bitcoin tribe, as I call them, these are large institutions that aren't that thrilled with the whole existence of crypto, but have been told for political reasons they now support crypto. So they're going to go out and they're going to buy a Bitcoin for a rich guy and announce that's innovation sorted, effectively. They'll then do a whole press statement around it, and they're the I bought a Bitcoin crowd, effectively. They will obsess over it being safe. They want to make it easy. I am being slightly flippant, but they want to keep it something nice and safe and as boring as possible. That is what they're about. You've got the whiz kids who like to sort of blow themselves up group. They tend to run around effectively. They're into, we're going to make shitloads of money. We're going to go to the moon. We're going to put it in a DeFi protocol. We're going to really, effectively. Some of them will do really well. Some will be a disaster. It's a bit like going to a casino. Effectively, as
Mm.
you walk out the casino, the guys who won the jackpot look like geniuses. The ones who basically lost all their money look like Muppets. Whether the geniuses are geniuses, you don't know. Whether the Muppets are Muppets, you don't know. But it is that high risk game. The beauty of them is they know they're high risk. So it's high risk, high reward, but at least there's a high reward for the high risk they're trying to talk you into taking, effectively. You've got other groups. You get the NFT guys, effectively. They're into more creatives and art. And they basically want to turn up and go, I've done an NFT and therefore my business is making no money. Well, now I'll make money because I stuck an NFT in the room. The problem that they've got is effectively crypto is not a magic potion which solves businesses effectively. So what is it really that that NFT or whatever it is doing, which is moving forwards? Bear in mind that NFTs have lost 99% of value over the last few years, which has put people off. But I'm a big supporter because they're the last bastion of the unregulated group in the room. So there's a sort of interesting twist at the moment. I keep suggesting, why don't we stick on an NFT? Because effectively, you do the NFT right, you can fall outside of most regulation. And the fund managers supporting hate NFTs because they've all lost money in it. So you've got sort of friction going on over there between the two sides of it, effectively. Each of those groups, and there are other groups as well, but those are sort of the three big groups. And they are not talking to each other, effectively. So when you create your business and you put it forward, which one of those is your soul when you look at it? That's the sort of the key point. And then when you find your tribe, you go with them. But the only other thing to bear in mind is money, and I'm going to get obsessed with this, the money talks effectively. So bear in mind, the I bought a Bitcoin group, that tends to be big institutions, reasonably well capitalized. They've actually got money to spend. The NFTs at the moment, basically have less money, effectively. So you've got to work out partly where your business actually fits psychologically, where the money's coming in from, and how it's going to work. And the other thing is kind of like, make sure it runs as a business. It's not just because when you do crypto, it's a lot of time and effort to run a crypto asset. So what you don't want, you don't sort of do it half-assed, cock it up, be accused of getting it all wrong, effectively. It's distract you from your core business, which is where you really want to go. And a well-run crypto project will help sponsor business forward. So to give you an idea, if you create a crypto asset which is linked to your firm, then holders of that crypto asset will be financially incentivized to say nice things about your business, because if people like your business, then your crypto asset is worth more money. And therefore, these are the people who should really be your biggest core supporters, should be the holders of your token, because the more successful your business is, the more their token is worth. So it can work really well. But if you basically put them up and you annoy all of them, then effectively what you've now got is you've got a group of people who are going out there and saying these people haven't done what they promised us that they would do, and they can then destroy the value of your business brand moving forward. So you have to really take it seriously if you're going to do it. You don't want to dabble.
And do you actually see right now that there are more ideas and businesses focused not only like on the hype, like before it was like the metaverse, crypto hype. Now it's AI. Like, so a lot of people actually left Web3 and moved into AI. So do you actually see that it's not that because it's not that hyped? There are more businesses and ideas who are actually like solving like a specific issue or like targeting a specific problem.
Yeah, that's definitely happening. There's another couple of interesting things which are happening at the moment as well. The first one is the sorts of people who are now turning up and playing the crypto game are bigger organizations. It's the I bought a Bitcoin group are gently, if you found them, coming out of that and getting slightly more adventurous.
Mm,
When they
right.
do that, you're going to get a lot less hype. You're going to get a lot. They are simply businesses which treat this as a business and are gently growing all the time. So you're not going to get 20 kids on TikTok sort of unlikely gazing, going, you're going to get rich and buy a Ferrari, because these guys don't do the I'm going on TikTok to say when I'm going to buy a Ferrari. They just treat it like a traditional, steadfast business. So those businesses are gently coming in. And Bailey Gifford, for example, recently have just launched its first fully tokenized fund in the UK. Bitwise did the first Sol-based fund end of last year, which was the fastest growing ETF in the US. So these are big players coming in with serious businesses effectively, but they're not going to hire 20 guys on TikTok to go hype them for an afternoon because they expect to be taken seriously, and therefore you don't get what I call the retail style hype. The other interesting play in the room at the moment is AI and crypto are playing a massive yin and yang type affair. They're like two opposites, but sort of need each other at the same time. So if you go in for the AI group rock up and they go, we will speak to the guys at the top of the table. We're going to let you sack most of your staff. We're going to be the way here, and we're going to make everything as cheap as possible. AI is about taking a thing and making it cheaper and more accessible and faster. It's about cheap, cheap, cheap. Problem with that is intrinsically they head towards insolvency, because as you've battled to be cheaper than anyone else, you stop making money. So it's the exact opposite. Crypto was grassroots up. So that's about the little guy being able to take on the big guy. That was the original crypto play. So you're no longer talking guys at the top of the table. You're talking the guys at the grassroots at the bottom of the table. The other thing is crypto is intrinsically about scarcity. So if you take something like Bitcoin, most of the value in Bitcoin is I've got a Bitcoin, you want my Bitcoin, I'm going to sell it to you for lots of money if you don't mind, so give me the money, effectively. So you've got this whole thing with AI, which is all about scarcity and making things rare. So you've now got, crypto meaning about scarcity and making things rare. So you've got the crypto scarcity meets the AI, make it cheap and plentiful. And that's where you're getting yin and yang, and the two of them tend to want to bump into each other because AI needs something to drive up the value. Hence, we talk about tokens in AI being used and all the rest of it. It's about trying to get something so they can make some money. The crypto guys have got the head around the scarcity point, but don't have the AI. We can do this, this, and this. So the two of them are actually beginning to need each other more and more. And businesses will probably tend to need to have both together working in conjunction. The interesting thing for mine is we've got clients on both sides. The psychologies of the different sides is completely different, effectively. So I've been involved in one. This is called Ask Guys, which is taking the kind of Web3 ideas and applied them in an AI style context. And what's been fascinating about it is a lot of the AI guys are making mistakes that crypto guys would never make, effectively. So the crypto guys will worry about what's happening to your data, whereas with AI, it's trust in the magic cloud, effectively. Whereas AI has got certain advantages over crypto. So there's two different football teams, both of which have got different learnings and different knowledge, interacting all the time, effectively. And that's going to be quite the playoff in the next couple of years when the two sides get entrenched and discover that love or hate it, they kind of need each other a bit more than they thought they did at the beginning.
I think I want to move a little bit to and talk about the crypto regulations you participated. What was the process like? Do you have any kind of the most interesting bits? And what was the as well, if when you're talking to people who don't really understand what the Web3 and crypto and blockchain is, and they're a bit scared of that, but they work in the government, how do you build this kind of like trust and like bridge the gap like between?
Yeah, so I always find the regulation bit fascinating. So I'm a regulatory lawyer, effectively. And what you get is your crypto guy rocks up and goes, I want regulation. You go, oh, great. What do you mean by regulation? I don't know. I just think I should be regulated. You go, okay. And the thing is like, well, I don't want to be regulated because, there's lots of fraud. And I'm thinking, well, if I commit fraud, I've committed fraud. That's illegal. You don't have to be regulated. Told don't commit fraud. So the key bit of regulation is what do you actually mean by regulation is the first question in the room, given that most of the people who say they want regulation or hate regulation can't actually tell you what it is they either want or hate. So what it is, regulation simply just means you've got a body, the regulator, and you've told that body, go regulate that thing. So someone is now going to apply an additional rulebook to you, which doesn't exist in the traditional don't lie, don't steal, the sort of 10 Commandments style bit of law, effectively, versus the regulatory bit. Now, what you've now got is the regulators in most jurisdictions, the nearest regulator you've got is a securities regulator, because same way that equity and crypto, very similar in some respects, they're being wrapped up and they go, well, equity, that's the nearest thing you've got. So we'll take one of those guys. I'm going to tell them now, you're responsible for this thing over here, effectively. Now, what you then get is all regulators want to do the right thing, but they've been brought up with the framework in which they operate. So when you tell a securities regulator, go and regulate crypto, what you'll immediately get is you'll get the way they regulate securities now being looked at as the baseline by which they regulate crypto assets, because that's just how they regulate. That's what they think is a good thing. And what you then walk into is for certain things like Bitcoin, for example, a lot of the rules tend to move across relatively easily. So warn people they can lose their money is a standard regulator way of doing things. Well, yeah, you can lose money in Bitcoin, you can lose money in shares, you can lose money in any investment you make. Those sorts of things track across relatively easily. If you take something like a video game, on the other hand, we've had a couple of issues with video games where they've had the NFTs, and NFTs have generally stayed unregulated because people see them like artwork, so they just kick them out of regulation. The other point you've got then is the other bit was the in-game virtual currency. Now, when that hits the regulator, they're thinking, oh, well, it's a currency. It's a bit like buying shares or whatever. We'll regulate it in a similar fashion, which simply does not work for a video game. And if you, let's say, Grand Theft Auto, you've gone around, you've shot 2 people, and you've got 10 tokens, and now you're going to have to go through an appropriateness assessment to see if these are things you should be putting towards your pension pot. It doesn't really work effectively. So that's kind of the split you've got in the room going on effectively, which is the baseline assumption is a security style approach, which works for certain things, but not all things within the industry. And that's why video games have done relatively badly when regulation has come in. But other things like DeFi type products and buying and selling Bitcoin and Ethereum and all those sort of things have tended to fit relatively easily because they're not that dissimilar actually to buying shares or other forms of investment. They're just another form of investment, same mentality, effectively. And when you speak to the regulator, bear in mind the regulator has got limited bandwidth, limited resources, is trying to do the right thing, and has grown up in a world where for their entire lives they've regulated things like securities, effectively. So if you can speak their language back to them, it's not they're trying to stop innovation or do something bad. It's just that is just not how they behave. They're trying to do the right thing. They've been brought up a certain way, and they've now been given this horrible job, which is go regulate a crypto asset, which is this thing which has been come out of thin air as far as they're concerned, which could mean anything as far as they're concerned. And they've been told if it goes wrong, their head's on the chopping block if it goes wrong, effectively. So you've got to get them comfortable and you've got to speak to them in a language that they will understand. And if you basically do, which crypto did in the early days, is just basically give them the finger and say, I'm not prepared to speak to you. Don't be shocked if they go, well, you're not terribly mature, so we're just not going to let that project go through, effectively. So you've got to talk to them in their own language and not. And this is the other thing which is what's interesting is you don't have to be perfect. The regulator does not expect perfection. The regulator loves slightly less bad than what was before. And where
Mm.
crypto is really solid, crypto is often less balanced before. So you take FTX back in the day. FTX went spectacularly bust. Okay, fraud, dishonesty, you name it, they went for it for an afternoon, effectively. And a lot of people in crypto when FTX went wrong thought, oh god, the regulators are just going to ban crypto. Actually, the exact opposite happened for lots of regulators. For the first time ever, they saw the value of the blockchain. Because whereas if you had committed the same sorts of actions in a traditional style trading venue, they would not have been able to ask the people because there were no records. They had a self-deleting WhatsApp group. There was no way for an insolvency guy to work out what was going on because they'd broken every traditional rule which existed in order to preserve that. But the blockchain meant there was a level of transparency, which meant a lot of the assets could be recovered by using the blockchain, not by using traditional law and regulation, which is what they tend to do. So lots of regulators started seeing this and going, actually, this is a good thing. Because what happens if they ignore all our rules, and we expect people to follow our rules usually when they're in our country, because that's just what we're there to enforce, effectively, but we get added protection off the blockchain. So actually what we've got is far better than it was before. And it's not, in my view, a huge coincidence that we're now seeing regulators, both in the US, the UK, the EU, all now gently fostering and pushing for things like tokenized securities. They're positively wanting it because they can now see the value. And in a way, FTX was helpful in terms of showing the true value when every other rule is ignored. Now they can have their rules, but they can supplement it by the additional advantages of using the blockchain technology to make it even more robust.
So is there any kind of problem right now in the world you're so passionate about, and you think like Web3 would be really a good solution to, like, if we didn't touch upon that yet. So,
To me, one of the reasons I entered crypto in the first place was Lehman Brothers. So Lehman Brothers did not go bust because it ran out of money.
mhm.
Lehman Brothers went bust because people lost confidence in Lehman Brothers. If Lehman Brothers had held all its assets on a blockchain, it would probably still be around now, because you could have shown in real time where the assets were, who held them, where it was coming from, and therefore people would not have lost faith in the bank. So the 2008 financial crisis, in my view, had been totally avoided if the assets had been held on a blockchain, effectively. To me, if you to go way, way back, you go back to the South Sea bubble in the UK, so going about 200 years, shares were banned in the UK because people didn't understand them. They thought they were too complicated. There was a whole lot of scams, and basically shares were banned in the UK for 100 years, effectively, as a result of the South Sea bubble. Crypto is the new shares, effectively. People don't totally understand it. Yes, there's lots of scams and fraud. I'm not defending everything that goes on in there, but it is the next evolution of the economy. It is the next evolution of how things are going to operate across a whole range of businesses. And where we'll end up is in a world where, one, guys like me come over as boring old farts because we rock up and people go, well, of course we do this, of course we do that. What the hell are you talking about? It's how it's always been as far as they're concerned. And the other bit is people will stop talking about it. It will simply be ingrained. So people will no longer get excited that someone has tokenized a fund. All fund units will be held on a blockchain. It's going to come in like a wave. And it's a bit like the biro. No one gets excited about biros anymore. Yeah, as an invention, they've been around since whenever, forever. And people just keep using biros. Blockchain is going to go down that route over time. So in a way, the fact it's becoming boring is it's maturing. Bear in mind that for shares, we've had a couple of 100 years and we're still not totally happy with how we regulate shares. Bitcoin, we've had since 2008, so we've got about 200 years worth of catching up to do, effectively. Going to be
Hopefully it will be quicker.
but that's simple what you're trying to do. So the FCA in the UK is bringing out a full-on rule book, guides, the whole lot in about a year or two. Whereas in shares, it's about 200 years. So when people go, there will be issues, like, no shit. They've just tried to do 200 years work in 2 years, effectively. And that is what the regulators are trying to achieve at the moment. And all that's happening is people are saying that they're not moving fast enough, or this could be improved, or like be done better. And look at from their perspective, it's good.
Oh my God, yeah, it's just like when you're comparing that way, it's just like, yeah, it's much more pressure. And do you have like any hopes and predictions for the future of the field and your own projects?
At the moment, the problem you've got in my mind is there's sort of belief at the traditionally that you give someone 2 packets of Smarties and a Mars bar, and then 6 months later they become billionaires and everyone becomes rich. There's this horrible belief currently at the moment, particularly in crypto, you can give people minor amounts of money and they'll make you major amounts of money off the back of it. That may have been true in, say, 2008, effectively, but that is dead, effectively, as a concept. So my short-term prediction is not a terribly positive one, which is, by and large, a lot of companies are being chronically, in my view, underfunded. There's a chronic lack of understanding of the amount of pain and suffering they're going to have to go through the next couple of years. And you're going to get off the back of that what lawyers politely call a consolidation, and what other people say something a bit more dramatic, but basically a shitload of all these companies coming together, merging, and basically going on the defensive because they've got lack of cash and they've got the cost of compliance, which is going to be in the hundreds of thousands of pounds minimum for most jurisdictions to operate in. What you then get is money is actually relative. So if you go to a fund and you go, you need at least 10 million assets under management to be a viable fund, nobody blinks, effectively. In fact, for a commodities fund, it's often more like 50 to 60 mil to get serious. Nobody blinks. If you go for a crypto project, you get a couple of £100,000, so you're told that's lots of money if you don't mind, if you see what I mean. What you then get is the money then has to shift mindset. So what you get is you get a movement away from, I've invested in 500 companies, 50p, and I'm hoping to become a multimillionaire, to, I've invested in 5 companies, quite lots of money, and we're going to seriously go for it. And that money needs to be unlocked effectively. And the problem is money unlocking takes time, because you've got to put together a fund. You've got to convince people to invest in the fund. The fund then has to make the investments and the companies then have to move forwards. So you're going to get a bit of a crunch in the next year or two when all these companies come together, followed by a whole plethora of new ideas and things opening up again as the money gets unlocked effectively. And the other thing is money likes to hunt for the latest idea. And a lot of the money's latest idea is currently in AI, effectively. So the shove towards AI has taken money out of crypto. But because I believe the two are intrinsically connected, what you're going to get is the money's going to shift from AI back to crypto. And these things will ping between each other depending on the latest idea. And one of the reasons there's lack of money in crypto is a lot of the rules aren't yet in force. So when you say, how much money do you need to operate? The answer is from the businesses, I don't really know. I'm guessing. Whereas the AI is going, well, if you give me this, I can make you that. In fact, it's much easier for fund manager to model. When these rules get more solid, suddenly crypto looks like a better bet. And gets increasingly regulated, it looks like a less safe bet because all the problems crypto currently has, AI will inherit, and then AI will then come good again. So the money will flicker between the two industries for a while. And the other thing, bear in mind, is there are not that many great ideas in the world at any particular moment, and the money needs an idea. So it will flood AI. I think it will then come back into crypto, and I think it will then going to be either crypto, AI, or quantum. It's going to play between the three players. Actually, a lot of businesses would just use all three together in real times.
If you have any last words to your listeners, and maybe what's the way to connect to you, where is the best way for them to reach out to you if they have any additional questions, or if in case you want to collaborate?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on pretty much all platforms, but if you just want to just reach out to me, my email is jamesj.cook, COOKE.com. Always happy to have a chat. And there's a lot of opportunity ahead, effectively. I don't want people coming out of this thing there isn't, but with volatility it becomes opportunity, and therefore you're in this game now where there will be big winners, effectively. The question then becomes, how do you make yourself one of the big winners, effectively, rather than one of the casualties on the sidelines?
Thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you very much for having me. It's been great fun.
Thank you. Have a good day.